Okay, we'll call the meeting to order. Thank you all for your patience. Before we get to begin the meeting, I do want to acknowledge a couple of things that have happened in our community. Of course, yesterday was St. Patrick's Day, and we have two Irishmen here on City Council, Councillors Nicholson and O'Neill, and I want to wish them both. I see they're both, oh, well, one of them's in green like me, and the other one's not. But he was in green yesterday. So, two admitted Irish. It's true. The other ones were certainly Irish. Yes, they were Irish yesterday. So, to all of our Irish community, happy St. Patrick's Day. Yesterday, in fact, they're both art and culture. Councillor Nicholson is chair of the art and culture. Councillor O'Neill is the vice chair, and they were undoubtedly celebrating culture yesterday. And Councillor O'Neill, in fact, celebrated culture by attending the opening of Pierre Coupé's Cutting Out the Tongue exhibit. Okay, but you're not supposed to do it yet. Okay, well, you've ruined it now. Okay, we'll do it in the other order, because he was, not only did he celebrate with his Irish community, but he celebrated with the Persian community, because yesterday they were celebrating the Nowruz festival here in Coquitlam, and there's our Irishman dancing Persian at Nowruz. And then he went from there to the opening of Cutting Out the Tongue, the art exhibit at Evergreen Cultural Centre. We invite you all to head down there, and perhaps Councillor O'Neill has something to say about that. But I did get you books from the Evergreen Cultural Centre of the art of Mr. Coupé, and I've got one there for Councillor Nicholson as well. Nicholson, yes.
Well, thank you very much. And it's quite an exciting art exhibition. It's abstract art. And when you say that, it's then...
Very similar to your dancing.
That free form. You know, a lot of people have a difficulty engaging with abstract art. But I want to encourage people to go down to the Art Gallery, the Evergreen Cultural Centre, and at the very least immerse themselves in just the visual experience. So it's all the colors, the balance, the harmonies, the designs, and it can even provoke or evoke an emotional response just at that level. But abstract art, the deeper meaning of abstract art, is sometimes difficult to get at, and that's one of the main criticisms, is if you haven't read the essay or heard the lecture that goes with it, it's sometimes difficult to get beyond that. Thankfully, there's 30 or 40 of us there at the opening, and the artist Pierre Coupé was describing what was behind that art, and if you weren't lucky enough to be there for that, there is this wonderful document that was produced, one of the finest, it may be the finest art catalog that we produced in association with the Evergreen Cultural Centre as well. A really wonderful thing. So if you can get one of those, then you can appreciate some of the things that, some of the very powerful and political statements that Pierre Coupé was attempting to make. So I definitely encourage people to go to the Art Gallery at the Evergreen Cultural Centre and to experience the show Cutting Out the Tongue. Thank you.
Well, I must say that I love art, but I'm not as much of a fan of abstract art as Councillor O'Neill. And I really loved, though, one of the quote I took away from yesterday, the explanation by the artist. He said, "Don't ask me to explain this one because I don't understand it myself." So, not true artist. Yes. Mr. Clerk.
Thank you, Your Worship. Item 1 is the minutes of the regular council meeting held Monday, March 11th. Recommendations to approve those minutes.
Moved by Councillor Reimer, second by Councillor Robinson. All in favour? Opposed? Carried unanimously.
Item 2 is the minutes of the Sustainability and Environmental Advisory Committee meeting of Thursday, February 21st. Recommendation to receive.
Moved by Councillor Nicholson, second by Councillor Hodge. All in favour? Opposed? Carried unanimously.
Item of business arising out of that advisory committee meeting is their draft work plan for 2013. The bullets are set in front of you, and seek your approval.
Moved by Councillor O'Neill, second by Councillor Reimer. Anybody? All in favour? Opposed? Carried unanimously.
Item 3 is the minutes of the Universal Accessibility Advisory Committee meeting of Tuesday, March 5th. Recommendation to receive.
Moved by Councillor Asmussen, second by Councillor Hodge. All in favour? Opposed? Carried unanimously.
Item 4 is the first item from this evening's public hearing. It's City of Coquitlam Zoning Amendment Bylaw number 4383. This pertains to 611, 613, 615, and 617 Regan Avenue. The recommendation is that Council give second and third readings to City of Coquitlam Zoning Amendment Bylaw number 4383.
Okay. Moved by Councillor O'Neill, second by Councillor Asmussen. Councillor Sikora.
Okay, thank you. Very interesting. You know, a few things bother me, Mayor. The fact is that, you know, we've relaxed the parking standards from 1.75 for 1.20, and then even then, they're not meeting that standard. Matter of fact, if you flip on the public hearing one where it shows the parking spaces required and the parking spaces are being provided, there's 96 spaces to be provided. Ask the developer or the architect, are you providing the parking spaces? Yes. Well, it's definitely no. Never mind yes. The 8 parking spaces short of the required the parking requirement. One of them is the fact is that, you know what, the city will say, give us $80,000 for 4 parking spaces and we'll forgo. You don't have to build the 4 parking spaces. Now, you know, I never thought that the city would go into prostitution. And I call it that. I can't call it anything else but that.
Councillor Sikora, that...
I know.
Well, then withdraw it.
Sorry, but that's what I'm going to call it because that's what it is. What you're doing is selling parking spaces that you don't have to sell.
Well, prostitution isn't selling parking spaces.
You've got nowhere to sell. Do you mind if I finish, Mayor? You know, so even then, it goes below 120 by 8 parking spaces. Now, you know, I mean, are we going to go to 110, 15, 100? What does it tell me? So know what I'm voting on. But don't give me this 120 and then go down that there's 8 parking spaces short, so we're going to accommodate you. We're going to accommodate you by getting $80,000 off you to begin with, and we're going to accommodate you some other way.
Point of order.
Councillor Nicholson. Will activate his microphone. Thank you.
Thank you. The motion before us is second and third reading to a zoning amendment bylaw. Parking, as I understand it, is an issue for the development permit. It's not on the table for debate tonight. Thank you.
Anyways, what I heard this afternoon was certainly
The rule on the point of order,
this evening.
Councillor Sikora.
Yes.
I have cautioned you a couple of times. Several months ago, we voted on a policy related to parking. We need not attack every proponent that comes before us to talk about that or to suggest that he meets that, because in fact this proposal met that. This item here is the zoning, and I'd urge you to please speak about the zoning before us.
Yep.
If we accept the zoning tonight, it may well be that in several months we'll have a development permit before us, and we can talk about.
And Mayor, you don't have to caution me. I was a mayor for 18 years, so I don't think you have to caution me. You know, you're.
Well, then I'd urge you to stick to the rules.
I know. You want to put on the show.
Well, no, actually, Councillor Nicholson raised the point of order, and as you know, that's something that I have to rule on.
And you just love that. You know, I mean. After all, you can put on the show, okay? But anyways, number one, we say people are saying that they called the RCMP 1 o'clock in the morning. Noise bylaw. Well, they phoned the RCMP, and I'm sure the answer that they got from the RCMP, we're not going to attend.
Councillor Sikora, this is about the zoning of the property at 611 through 617 Regan.
Mayor, I'm just trying to tell you.
The RCMP's response time isn't part of the zoning.
Oh, Mayor, would you please let me finish?
I can't, actually, unless you're going to speak about the zoning. because council is going to ask me. I think someone else will raise a point of order, and I'm forced to apply the rules that council applies.
So the zoning in the Coquitlam Center, we said we had certain amount of parking spaces. In the Coquitlam Center, we have access parking spaces. Well, the access parking spaces in Coquitlam Center are offshore buyers. That's why. That's why you have those access parking. But I'll tell you, Mayor, there's no way that I can support this kind of development in any way, shape, or form with never mind the 1.20, but less than that by 8 more parking spaces. That's all there is to it. So we got to get to reality, because I will not going to vote for something that the future residents of this community will have to live with, of shortage of parking spaces and the problems that you will foist onto the residents of this city come a few years from now. And I don't know, we've got this parking.
Councillor Sikora, it's just about the zoning, though, tonight.
Mayor, I'm starting to get a little short in temper with you. I really am. I
Okay,
really
speak
am.
about whatever you like.
Because parking is part of the rezoning. Parking, you show me somewhere, any building in the city, the parking is not part of the rezoning. It is, isn't it? Isn't it? Would you rezone anything that had no parking at all? No.
No, but if it met our zoning bylaw. So
Okay.
if you could deal with the aspects of zoning tonight.
Well, as far as I'm concerned, it did not meet it, because they're 8 parking spaces short, okay? So, never mind the 120, they're less than that. So I will not be supporting this.
Okay.
As I said before, I'll not support anything that's being built by this city, or the city is allowing to come forward that's going to have parking spaces short. Beyond the 120, never mind. To me, I could probably go for 150. It used to be 175. We're now way below that, and we're going further down. So I will not be supporting it, sorry. Thank you.
Thank you. And just to be clear, I believe the question asked during when the proponent was at the microphone was, does it meet the bylaw? Was the parking meet the bylaw? It wasn't, do you have the number of parking spaces? Because I don't want to suggest that it may have been suggested that the proponent was inaccurate or incomplete or dishonest with the answer. The answer that I heard was, yes, it met the bylaw, which in fact it does meet the bylaw. So thank you. Councillor Robinson.
Thank you. Well, I'll certainly be supporting it. It meets many of the goals of our OCP in terms of compact, complete communities, especially given the proximity to Evergreen Line. This is exactly the kind of thing that we've been looking for in terms of density. What we heard, though, in the public hearing, because that's what I was paying attention to, sort of what was the community have to say about it, had to do with the impacts of construction more than anything. And I think staff, heard that loud and clear. I've certainly heard that loud and clear, and I think we need to be paying very close attention to that. We've certainly been dealing with that in the Northeast, and I think this will be just a bit of a hot spot for it. It's not a zoning issue at this point, but it's certainly something that we've heard the public say loud and clear. I can't imagine us not supporting something like this, again, given its proximity to the Evergreen Line. It's what we've been talking about. It's what we've been preparing the community for, is moving in this direction. I do have to say that I was pleasantly surprised to see some of the sort of little changes, but also hearing that they're bringing forward 4 accessible units, which are actually much more impactful in our community than adaptable units, and then hearing that there is some appetite to construct the other units as adaptable units means that people can age in place, and typically when people are aging in place or they have some challenges, they often don't use cars. So in terms of parking, it all fits together. I know that Councillor Sikora is very frustrated and very concerned about parking. But I also think that given the proximity, again, to the Evergreen Line, I think this is the crux of this change, is that is what we're looking for as a community. We have said we need to be less reliant on our vehicles, and if we're going to be less reliant on our vehicles, we shouldn't require as much parking. So I'm pleased to move this one through second and third reading. Thanks.
Thank you. Councillor O'Neill.
Yes, thank you. And Councillor Robinson said many of the same things I was going to say. that, and specifically on the parking, because it seems to be an issue du jour, and I was concerned about that, and getting information, getting the right information in front of us. It's one of the reasons I asked Mr. Rostich during the public hearing about what his experience was, not just in the Coquitlam Centre area, but all around the Lower Mainland, about how much parking is needed, how much parking is excess, where the market is going, and whether or not he thought this was going to be sufficient for this particular project. And his answer was unreserved, a very clear declaration of yes. In the affirmative, it was enough. And also in the interest of clarity, because I see there's a few seeds of confusion thrown on the floor here, Councillor Sikora was talking about an old parking ratio being 1.75. I believe he's incorrect there. He also talked about the current ratio, and this is the number of parking spaces per two-bedroom unit, being 1.20. He's incorrect there, unless my memory's totally gone. But I believe that the big bylaw that we talked about, and it was a good discussion, a long discussion, it wasn't unanimous either, but it was a clear majority of council supported it, that the old standard was 1.5, and that what we voted for was to lower that to 1.35, and then that could be lowered further in a very small amount. One, by providing co-op various TDS, transit demand strategy, TDM management, transit demand management things such as bicycles, transit passes, co-op cars, and that could be lowered even further by a contribution of $20,000 per excused stall. To go into some sort of a parking lot fund that we would set up. And it was also explained very clearly and repeatedly that this, especially that $20,000 payment to the city, would not only help us perhaps build a parking structure sometime in the future, which would aid parking, so hence no big long-term parking problem, but also would, and I think this is very important, would also facilitate the construction of some affordable housing, affordable market housing, that would otherwise not be able to be built. Now think about it. If with a building like this, a parking stall might cost $40,000 or $50,000 to build, and if those parking stalls are not needed, as the developer has told us, the architect, they're going to sit there not used by anybody, but they will have to be paid for by the person who's buying that, by the incremental cost of all of those unused parking stalls that Councillor Sikora wants us to build. They'll be sitting there empty, will have to be paid by the young families, the young couples, the single men and single women who are moving in there and wanting to live in an affordable housing that they can meet the mortgage payments. But Councillor Sikora would like to add on extra cost to pay for parking stalls that are not needed, that won't be needed. Everything that we've heard, the engineering department during our debate showed us a study or survey of, I think it was housing demand, parking demand in around 44, I believe it was, developments around transit stations in the Lower Mainland, and they came up with an average, and that average was factored into our decision. So on every respect, I think, of Councillor Sikora's argument, he's wrong. Every respect. So I hate to give him all the publicity that he's getting right now, but I can't let this incorrect information stand the way it is.
Councillor O'Neill, I'm going to have to rule you out of order if you keep talking about parking.
I finished talking about parking. Let me talk about the rest of the development. I think it's the ideal sort of development. This zoning that we're looking for here, close to a SkyTrain station, close to an emerging new city core, is exactly the sort of thing we're looking for. I think a walking distance to transit, walking distance to a park. There's going to be a lot of new things happening in the area, And it's not only part of what Coquitlam wants, it's part of what Metro Vancouver wants, as well as concentrating the growth around transit stations. So it's a good use of this land. It's a very good use of this land. And I certainly understand how disruptive the construction can be when transitions like this are happening. And I certainly hope that our staff will indeed look after some of these issues to dampen the noise and the disruption. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Councillor Hodge.
Well, I won't start into my favorite subject, which is parking, so that I won't have to be ruled out of order, other than to say that given that the proximity to SkyTrain and the previous TDS has been passed, I think this is an example where this parking will work here, but I do have concerns in general for this area, because it is going to be near a SkyTrain station. There is going to be pressure on this neighborhood for street parking, and to me, street parking is more of a concern than parking within the actual building itself. And I think that as we move forward, we will have to look at management strategies in this area in the future. So I appreciate the concerns of the residents, and I think that we will have to work to mitigate the street parking portion of this, and I think there's going to be other pressures that are going to come to play as well on this one. So I think that that being this close to a SkyTrain station, this to me seems to be the appropriate use of the land. We want to try to densify, put in affordable housing, try to have people live close to the SkyTrain station, and to me, if not here, where? I mean, this is where we want to try to build and increase the type of density to somewhere where we can transition between the high-rises that we're going to see on the existing commercial site and transitioning out into the neighborhood where we have the single-family homes. I do have some concerns about the actual looks and design of it. I think those are things that certainly the design is evolving. It looks better than the first one, and I think that by the time we come to the development permit, that we'll have that fine-tuned, and I look forward to seeing all the final tweaks and everything that the developer will bring forward. Again, the impact of construction is a real concern. I appreciate what the residents have gone through. I think they've been generally very patient at a time that they're seeing a lot of change. They're seeing change in their neighborhood. Some of the residents have lived there for many years. They're seeing a change in the look of their neighborhood, and also their daily life is changing as they deal with the construction. And I think, again, when we talk about at the development permit stage, that we can look at maybe putting in some measures to help mitigate that. We've learned from some of the areas that have been under these type of pressures, and I think we heard what the residents had to say tonight, and that we will have to, as a city, work towards trying to mitigate and help them through this process. And again, I was really happy to learn about the 4 accessible units. I think that's I think we're acknowledging where our demographics are going and planning for the future, and especially the developers also looking at future adaptability. I think is really a key, and I think that's something that we need to encourage in all of our new developments like this. So I'm liking what I'm seeing so far, but I appreciate that there's some concerns in that neighborhood, and I think we just have to work to try to address those as we move forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Nicholson.
Thank you, Your Worship. Well, I'm certainly the last person who should risk being ruled out of order for talking about parking. So I'll start by saying that I support second and third reading of this zoning bylaw. And I'll reiterate Councillor Robinson's point. The bulk of what we heard from the neighbours, from the people who will be impacted by this development, it's not about the impact of the development, it's about the impact of building the development, along with all the other building that's going on in the neighbourhood. And I am sure that staff heard them and have heard some of us, and the level of enforcement and the provision of opportunities for perhaps trades to park off-site and all the rest of it will be dealt with. So I said I wasn't going to talk about parking. I'll talk about expectations for fourth and final reading. I applaud, I agree with the parking strategy that Council has adopted. I don't see any need to revisit it. I applaud the developer, the proponent, for having looked at that and for planning to take advantage of it. But the emphasis is on the word planning, and I'm slightly bothered. And under the heading parking in the brief, it says sites located within the Evergreen Line shoulder station area and complies with the off-street parking requirements in the zoning bylaw. I don't think it complies yet, because the next statement says the applicant intends to achieve reductions in accordance with the zoning bylaw by including TDM measures. Summary of those measures will be submitted for review at final reading. There's some suggestions of what measures might be chosen in order to achieve the reductions. And I think it's important for the proponent to understand that that's something that I certainly will look at very carefully come final reading, because I think that we crafted some available reductions. We did it carefully, and I expect people to meet the criteria to obtain the reductions. I'm not suggesting for a moment that I think these people don't intend to do that, but I think it's important that they understand that that's something that I certainly will be looking for at the final stage of this. Thank you.
Councillor Asmussen.
Well, thank you. This development fits the zoning, the character, what's planned for presently in the Coquitlam area. It's an area in transition from what it was to what's been envisioned to be, and this fits within it. I want to thank the developer for the adaptable units and the willingness to make, or accessible units and adaptable units throughout, stepping up to that. And I would thank you for that, and it sends a message to other developers, because a lot of times in construction you do things and change, and sometimes in the building instruction can be difficult because you know what you know. And to step up and make this change is good to see in Coquitlam. I think we want to give you kudos for the willingness to step into that, and I thank you for that. The other issue I want to talk about, and I think you've heard it from Councillor, and I want to direct this to the proponent and to staff. One of my big things for the last number of years has been challenging staff in regards to the social impacts of construction, whether it's our highways projects, construction of high-rises, housing in the Northeast or in the Coquitlam area. To understand, and I live in that right now in the Northeast, I've got beside me 34 housing units being put up. On the other side of the street, there's, I think, 50 townhouse duplex units going up. And a lot of it comes down to thoughtfulness of the contractors working on the site. We've had some people come down the road with their machines, block up the road, completely drop off their stuff, and not concerned about the neighbors. So I think there's a lot of ways that you can do simple things and being thoughtful to the neighbors that live within that area. Just not the parking and where the vehicles park, but also how you have your offloading of your trusses, your wood, how you park the vehicles, blocking up space so you're not affecting the place. Not starting before, not having your excavation equipment guys driving in at 5 a.m. in the morning to drop off their equipment because they want to get in there before the rush hour, but they wake up everybody in the neighborhood. And to staff, I want us to keep working on our processes and where we can better enforce the social impacts of construction, because we're a growing city, and the biggest complaints we get about development isn't so much the development itself, it's about the impacts that's created by those developments in a short time. And I can understand that right now, what I'm living through, and Councillor Hodges lived through some of that. I think that I like the tweaks to the design, and this is still a concept, and I know Mr. McIntyre has been said earlier that you're going to be working with the applicant between now and development permit about the design, because this is a concept. We don't have the design drawings and all that, so that'll be coming through, and there's a chance for staff to work with the applicant on the design and issues and move it through. But at this point, from what I've seen from this developer and the project, I'm very pleased with their response, and I will be supporting this for second and third. Thank you.
Thank you. I will be supporting this for second and third as well. I want to thank the developer for responsiveness. I also want to thank those that spoke, but I do want to make it clear that when we do these neighborhoods, neighborhood is changing, and I want to make sure that no one, particularly the people who move into this building, get the impression that the property next to them is never going to change. We heard one of the speakers, for example, here, who just bought into a brand new building, suggest that, well, what happens if the neighborhood changes with another new building? Well, I remember when their building was proposed, that building was proposed on Langside, and the people across the street expressed concern that what would happen if we allowed that building to be built? It might block their view, for example. Well, now the building's built and someone who lives in it says, well, you can't allow the next building to be built because it might block our view. This neighborhood is going to change. It is near a transit station, and near transit stations we have to, I think, responsibly develop and put density so that we can put as many people next to the station and mitigate traffic challenges across this region. We have to do that. So I hope that we can do that by providing enough information to the public and letting them know and letting them have their say about the kinds of challenges we can work on. But these neighborhoods will be mid-density, and as we get closer to the station, they'll be higher density. It frustrates me that we quite often see the phenomenon that the people in Phase 1 are against Phase 2, and the people in Phase 2 are against Phase 3. There's a project not far from City Hall here where 4 towers were planned. 4 towers were always going to be built, and the residents of the 3rd tower came to the public hearing opposed to the 4th tower on the grounds that it would block their view. These are things that we need to make sure that people understand before they buy, but also that we need to, when they raise those concerns, as one phase being after being opposed to the next phase, that we explain to them that no, that's not how this stuff works. We also need to make sure, as other council members have said, that we do exactly the right project. We make sure we don't waste. We don't make sure that our zoning requirements, including our requirements for parking, are the right amount. And I'm not going to go into that, obviously. So I'm going to be supportive of this project. To second and third, Councillor Reid.
Thank you. I will support it. Just for the record, not that it's going to surprise anyone, I do not support the city parking strategy at all. I think lots of things can look good on paper, but I'm out there trying to sell some of these units, and I think there's every realtor probably in the Lower Mainland knows how big a deal parking is, and I'm not going to talk about that till the development permit stage, and then I'll have lots to say. I do want to say to the neighborhood, your neighborhood has changed, and it's going to continue to change. And for those people who are coming along and buying into some of the different forms of housing around there, the single-family homes and some of the townhomes, it's buyer beware. Know what you're buying. Look and see if there's a couple of little houses amongst all the big apartment blocks, and know that if your view is reliant on those little houses, it probably isn't going to be there in the next 10 years. So one has to look at that. What does concern me, though, is I wonder if we need more enforcement at some of these sites. I mean, more bylaw enforcement. And I think we've talked about being polite, being good neighbors, being socially responsible, doing all these things. But I think after a couple of warnings for some of the people that are developing around there, if they're not being heeded to, then I think we really need to start ticketing. And we've got 3 apartment buildings, I believe, actively in the building stage right now. Is that correct? I think I heard 3, and so this one may come on as some of those are finishing off. But I'm sure with this active market in that particular area, more are going to be coming on. So I think engineering, we're going to have to come up with some kind of a way to monitor the developers or the builders, I should say, the construction crews, in some way that's going to help the neighborhood, because this is going to be quite a few years of upset, and that is not easy to go through. So I will have lots more to say, I guess, at development permit stage, and I will leave it at that for now. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Reimer.
Thank you. Well, I fully support this. It's near the Evergreen line. The zoning makes perfect sense for where it is. I just want to say that for those people who are concerned about the impact of construction is that you can call that number that was provided earlier, and you can also look up bylaw enforcement as well. And I do know that there were some issues we encountered this fall that were dealt with, and some real changes were made in the area of construction impacts. So this is going to continue on over the coming years, such as Councillor Reid says, but don't ever think that there isn't anything you can do, because help is just a phone call away to bylaw enforcement or to our engineering department. Thank you.
Thank you. Seeing no other speakers, motion is second and third. All in favor? Opposed? Councillor Sikora is opposed. The motion carries. Before we move to the next item, I do want to actually, I specifically avoided comments about the impact of construction because it wasn't the zoning issue, but on this particular site, and we've heard before, Langside has become a challenge. I visited that property, the property on Langside, probably 3 or 4 times in the last several months, always finding breaking of the rules and real challenges created by the way in which the construction there has progressed. And I don't know how to get past it, because we know obviously we're going to see more construction impacts there. The developer at Langside actually bought the property across the street and started parking trucks and such on the front lawn of the single-family home across the street. Bought another one around the corner. So obviously that developer has a stake in the neighborhood and is going to continue to make applications for more housing, and that's fine. The neighborhood is changing, but we're going to have to manage. We're going to find a better way to manage the impacts of our construction in established neighborhoods. We did some work on managing the impacts of construction in Greenfield. Now we've got some brownfield work to do, I think, and I'm looking to Mr. McIntyre, please.
Yes, thanks, Worship. And just very briefly, it's an issue I think has been noted by some of the council members we've experienced certainly up in the northeast, and I think a more rigorous program has been brought into effect there, and I think that's starting to have some positive results. I can tell you that there is coordination between the planning and building and engineering staff, the same sort of integrated team that's now more active in the northeast will be in this area as well. And just lastly, and something I'll take back and work with our staff is, council may recall that there was a sort of good neighbor construction guide that was prepared a little time ago, and I'm told by our building permit staff that is brought to the attention of building permit applicants when they come in, and with each permit that goes out, they're reminded of that. At pre-construction meetings, they are reminded of that. But nonetheless, I think it's something we may need to dust off and just revisit that. And so I'm going to take that away. But also, I think with this applicant here in this project, we will want to, I think they heard a lot tonight. I think they're encouraged with the way the project is progressing, but there are these neighborhood concerns. And I'm sure that this applicant will want to do better than others that have gone before in that area. And so I think it's something we want to have that discussion with them so everyone's aware going into it. This is sort of the expectations for good, orderly construction practices in that neighborhood.
Well, it seems to me every time you visit the site, the construction fence is pushed several feet back into public property, or in the case of the south or the west edge of the property on Langside, into the park. If we have to, let's bring in a specific bylaw enforcement officer whose job it is to earn his salary by going and making sure that these folks, if you move it a foot on a public property, you'll get a ticket and we'll push it back, and when necessary, we'll shut the site down. This is, we can't allow these kinds of impacts because it makes it difficult for the responsible developer who comes here, and half the comments at the public hearing are about the irresponsible developer that preceded him, and or the trades and contractors. I'm not saying it necessarily was the developer, but essentially if the site isn't well managed, it makes the next site more difficult, and we don't want necessarily our decisions to be based on what someone else has done on a different site. So please, let's figure out a strategy here to move forward. Mr. Clerk.
Thank you, Your Worship. Next item, item 5, is the second item from this evening's public hearing. It's City of Coquitlam zoning amendment bylaw number 4384. This is a text amendment to permit public service use in commercial and industrial zones. The staff recommendation is that Council give second, third, and fourth and final readings to City of Coquitlam zoning amendment bylaw number 4384.
Moved by Councillor Reimer, second by Councillor Nicholson. All in favor? Opposed? Carried unanimously. Mr. Shaw.
Item 6 is our third and final item from this evening's public hearing. This is City of Coquitlam Citywide Official Community Plan Amendment Bylaw number 4295. This is the Development Permit and Design Guideline Consolidation. Staff recommendation is that Council give second, third, and fourth and final readings to City of Coquitlam Citywide Official Community Plan Amendment Bylaw number 4295.
Moved by Councillor Asmundson, second by Councillor Robinson. All in favor? Opposed? Carried unanimously.
Item 7 is our first report of staff this evening. This pertains to the city centre on-street parking. This is phase number 3A. Staff recommendations that Council direct staff to proceed with the proposed phase 3A changes to the city centre on-street pay parking as contained within the report.
Moved by Councillor Asmundson, seconded by Councillor Reimer. At this point, you're allowed to talk about parking. Councillor Sikora.
Thank you very much. To the planning department, I notice you have here our engineering, the 4-hour parking on Pine Tree. What made you decide that a 4-hour parking is the figure you should go with?
Your Worship, we have senior staff here from the engineering department for detailed questions. I'm just going to ask Dan Mooney to come up and discuss the extension of hours on Pine Tree and how it relates to utilization of those spaces. Thanks.
Mr. Mooney, you always seems to bring you forward for the tough questions.
Thank you. Through the chair, when we reintroduced pay parking on Pine Tree Way as part of Phase 1 and Phase 2, we did it with the exact same time limits that were there before, so it's a 2-hour maximum between the hours of 8 a.m. and 6 p.m. Since we've implemented it, the amount of on-street parking on Pine Tree Way has decreased significantly. And when we talked with people from Douglas College and the high school and the people at the Evergreen Cultural Center, when that lot is full, one of the impediments we found that they had to the parking on Pine Tree Way is the 2-hour limit. So our feeling was that we would ratchet up incrementally to 4 hours maximum to try and get that occupancy back and that utilization back on Pine Tree Way.
Well, you know, the problem is that, you know what, you allow 4-hour parking, and I think it's just too much myself personally. I don't think there should be any 4-hour parking in the city. Number one, I notice on Ridgeway, in front of the drugstore and places like that, in our community police station, there's 4-hour parking there. I don't understand why there's 4-hour parking in those places. It's a business area where people go and either to the bakery or to the drugstore, wherever it is, and they're out of there. I mean, 4-hour parking, and I've complained about this a few times, and I notice it's been there for many, many years and continues to be there for a number of years, and I'm wondering why. And again, if I could continue, the fact is that all our parking lots out here now at Douglas College, not at Douglas College, at our Evergreen Cultural Center and our Town Center Park, all the parking lots are gone with the people that are going to Douglas College are parking in there, you know. So, and you can see that there's nobody in the stadium, there's nobody on the fields, but the parking lots are full. So that means only one thing: what kind of enforcement do we have in our parks for parking? For, let's say, people want to get in, and very soon you're going to have SkyTrain. What do you think is going to happen with those the parking lots in the Coquitlam Center and our sports fields? They'll be full of people wanting to ride the SkyTrain. So what are we planning to do there?
The reports on-street parking, do we have any, Mr. Mooney's not responsible. Okay. Mr. Zuzak.
I think what I can say, Your Worship, is that there is a body of work that is being undertaken this year to come back to council to discuss that very issue. Also discussing how to accommodate SkyTrain parking needs, the potential for parking lots or built parking lots. That is a body of work that's being undertaken by our transportation planning manager, Catherine Mahoric, and that would be presented sometime in the second half of 2013.
Okay, now tell me, how do you enforce this 4-hour parking or 2-hour parking? How do you enforce it?
Mr. Mooney.
Through the chair, the enforcement is done through our own internal bylaw enforcement officers, and they're able to, the pay parking machines will only issue parking tickets for the maximum duration for that zone. What we're suggesting for Pine Tree Way is up to 4 hours. There is still, we're going to maintain a 15-minute parking zone. We're going to maintain a 2-hour parking zone, and we're going to have another area that'll be up to 4 hours. So the machines within each of those zones will only issue parking permits or tickets for that maximum duration. The bylaws officers do have access to that ticket information, who's paid, and because it's by license plate, if we see a vehicle that is actually repaid for additional time, then they have a maximum duration.
And the license plate, you have to put your license plate in to get a parking ticket. Am I correct?
Yes, that is correct.
That's the system, yeah.
Okay. I thought that maybe, marking tires or whatever it is, which I haven't seen anybody doing that.
That is an option, but the way that we've set it up now with the parking machines, there's a lot of information there that they can use for enforcement as well.
Good idea. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Hodge.
Okay, I get to talk about parking now, and this is the area that I want to talk about is right up there by Douglas College. And I do have some concerns with what is happening with our street parking up there, and also what's happening with our park. And I realize today we're talking about the street parking, but as far as I'm concerned, it's all connected, because what I think is happening is that I drove up there the other day and the street was empty. There was, I think, one car parked along Pine Tree up near the Douglas College, and the lots, the city lots for the parks were half full. And on a rainy day, there was nobody in the park. So what appeared to me was happening was that students and other people are parking in the park area and they're not using the street. And I don't know if that's because the street parking isn't long enough for them to get into a class and out, and now so they're opting to park in the actual parks up by the spray pool and areas. And I think this is going to be an issue when we hit summertime and people actually want to use the park. We're going to end up with a situation where the people wanting to use the spray pool are going to be parking out on the street, and the people who are at the college are going to bypass the street parking and they parked in the parking lot. So I think that there's obviously something out of sync with the timing. Maybe it's not long enough, but I would question, we're currently 15 minutes in some places there. We're going to change the 15-minute, though. Is that correct? I was just curious why we would have 15-minute parking. You usually see that in front of stores and places where you want to keep the quick turnover. And I don't know why we would be encouraging a quick turnover in a spot that's across from a school and next to a park.
Through the chair, currently we have a fairly extensive 15-minute zone on both sides of Pine Tree. What we're looking at is reducing it, shrinking it significantly, and it would only be on the same side as the school and college. In the immediate area of their access, it would be for picking up students, running in to grab a transcript, doing those type of short-term. When we look at time duration, we try and reflect the surrounding land uses and the customer. But we also recognize that there's a variety of customers, and we try and hit that sweet spot of ideally 85% occupancy or 15% vacancy, so that people have a reasonable chance to get a parking spot of a duration that suits their needs. So yes, we're at this time proposing to keep a 15-minute parking zone, but it would only be on the school site, and it would be significantly smaller than what it is today. I would just simply add as well that these new parking machines do give us the ability to get good data in terms of occupancy and utilization, so that we can go back historically and say, yes, we're meeting the market, or no, we're actually getting oversubscribed, and maybe look at reallocating those time zones.
And I'm really happy to hear that, because I think that we are going to see parking is going to become a very precious commodity in the town center area. I think in some areas it already is, and so I think that anything that we can do to manage that, to get maximum use out of it and provide service to our citizens, I think is the direction we want to go. So I'm pleased to see that this is being done. I'm also happy to hear that we are looking at the parking in the town center area and moving forward, because that's a key, that's certainly a concern of mine. And I think, and when we start talking about the possibility of destination parking or parking structure, again, I think we're on the right track, because as that SkyTrain track comes in here, we're going to need parking. And I think I appreciate the staff as being proactive on this now, and we're getting on it, because I think that this is going to take a while for everybody to get used to the regulations. I think anything we can do now to tweak it so that we're ready to go when we see that crunch. And I think it is coming. I have one question. I know that the city does have parking decals, but my understanding is they're not valid on the street. They're valid in the lots, but not on the curbside parking. Is that correct?
Through the chair, yes, that is correct. The $18 annual pass is an option for residents of Coquitlam to use our on-site pay parking stalls. We have four pay parking lots. We have 4 lots where we have on-site pay parking. That is the Evergreen Cultural Center, the Pine Tree Community Center, the City Center Aquatic Center, and our small lot at the corner of Lincoln and Westwood Street, where we have pay parking, and those $18 annual passes entitle them to use any of those 4 lots for the durations that they have, but it does not extend any privileges to on-street pay parking.
Okay, thank you. I think that was important clarification. Thank you.
Thank you. Actually, I just wanted to comment on the one element. I envision a time when we're using those spaces in the parking lot that are large parking lots in our town center park that aren't being used really during the weekdays. We could identify hundreds of spaces, I think, that would satisfy some of the need for park and ride facilities for SkyTrain, and I want to see that discussion take place, because those are lots that are used on weekends. So I'm not adverse to that at all. Okay, the motion is staff report. All in favor? Opposed? Carried unanimously.
Item 8, it pertains to the interim replacement of the Braid Street Bailey Bridge. The 2-part staff recommendation is that Council direct the General Manager of Engineering and Public Works to contact New Westminster in order to coordinate the replacement of the Braid Street Bailey Bridge with a facility that accommodates all legal truck and industrial traffic, accommodates 2 lanes of traffic with a simple basic structure, accommodates pedestrians and cyclists, minimizes environmental impacts to the Brunette River, includes salvageable components as much as possible, and is constructed in the summer of 2013 in order to be open by September. And 2, that the General Manager of Engineering and Public Works report back on the implementation and cost-sharing discussions with the City of New Westminster by the end of April.
Moved by Councillor Asmussen, second by Councillor Reimer.
Your Worship, we do have introductory comments by the General Manager first.
I'll be brief, Your Worship. Thank you. The facility and the adjacent roadway are essentially a shared asset between the City of New Westminster and the City of Coquitlam. It's an intermunicipal bridge and an intermunicipal roadway, and the costs have historically been shared, both the capital installation costs as well as operating and maintenance costs. We at the staff level, we've done some fairly quick and preliminary engineering to determine how quickly we could get a 2-lane bridge in. The technical aspects of that are described within the body of this report, and I'd be happy to discuss that with you if you like. We think that we have an option that is constructible and in place by September if we have City of New Westminster acceptance and approval to go ahead. Sort of the broad policy background in this should also be emphasized as well. The report does include some excerpts out of the City of New Westminster's own official community plan that talks about how important it is to have roadways that serve industrial traffic and maintaining a competitive environment for those industries. Also, our regional growth strategy has statements and strategies in there that talk about efficient transportation systems, goods movement, and safe passage. And we think that the idea that we've come up with does satisfy a lot of those concerns, and so we put it to you, and we will certainly follow up on your direction in the matter. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and thank you so much for the speed with which this proposal was assembled. This has become an urgent matter for Coquitlam and for New Westminster businesses alike, because since the closure of the bridge about a month ago, and the fact is that it remains closed, although the public may well perceive that it's open because it's open to cars. It was actually intended as a goods movement bridge largely, and it remains closed to one of our big industrial clients, big industrial users, and that is the Stella Jones plant right next door. You can see it on this on the right side of the aerial photo here, and this urgency, I think, has to be met really quickly with a proposal, and I really appreciate the proposal that's before us here. A proposal that, again, is a temporary bridge, but the last temporary bridge was in place for almost 20, it has been 20 years now since it was built, a single-lane bridge, which is quite inadequate given that it's on a 4-lane good movement corridor that stretches from essentially from Mission all the way through to UBC. And there's one section that's 2 lanes, and it goes down to the 1 lane at the Bailey Bridge. So this is very much needed. It's and it is an urgent need at this point, because there's so much of our industrial land on the Coquitlam side that I think remains underutilized until we can solve this this one bottleneck in regional transportation. I've also heard from many people about the challenges of rebuilding the Royal Columbian Hospital in its current location. It's a regional hospital that is very difficult to get to because of transportation decisions that are being made, and we need to, I think, solve some of those transportation challenges. This one is one of them. It's not the only one by any means. Certainly the Brunette Overpass is another one that is in the hands of another level of government, but we do need to solve these transportation issues in order to make sure that we can get to the regional hospital and that we don't have to turn around and go to Eagle Ridge Hospital, for example, which isn't a regional hospital, but it's easier for many of our residents to get to because of the traffic bottlenecks on the New Westminster border. So I'm going to Councillor Robinson.
Thank you. I appreciate Mr. Suzak giving us a very brief history of sort of the financial arrangement historically. So I just want to make sure I understand it. So when you say shared capital and operational costs, it was a 50-50?
Yes, that's correct. We share the costs of the bridge on a 50-50 basis. 50%
of the capital, 50% of the operations?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Sikora.
Yeah, thank you very much. You know, I can't believe, Mayor, did you mention about the Royal Columbian Hospital? The fact is that there's that great big railway bottleneck in there. There's about 8 lanes of railway that somehow, if somebody was going to go to Royal Columbian Hospital, they're going through there. There's not a chance in the world, whether it be ambulance or otherwise. There's no way that they could get through. If there's a train going through or freight going through, they'd be going another way. But a couple of things bother me. Number one, that 10,000 vehicles a day, that can't be a realistic figure. Because I was there sitting the other day for a couple hours, and there's nowhere near to that kind of traffic going through there. So where did you get this 10,000 vehicles a day?
That would be from our own traffic counts, Your Worship. That's the numbers that I'm told. The traffic is split About 60-40, where about somewhat under 3,000 vehicles a day are going into New Westminster, and somewhat over 6,000 vehicles a day are coming from New West toward Coquitlam. But it's around 10,000 a day.
And this bridge is in New Westminster?
The bridge happens to be located within the city of New Westminster, wholly within New Westminster. However, you know, when a dispute arose some 10 years or so ago, a judge at the time absolutely confirmed that the facility is what's known as an intermunicipal bridge and needs to be jointly shared and jointly managed by the two cities.
And you've got a price tag of $1.7 million.
We've established a high-level budget. I would not call that necessarily the price tag because detail engineering needs to be done, but we are comfortable with that budget, provided we don't have some major surprises from agencies like DFO, for example, and we're trying to design it and build it in a way where those issues are minimized. Okay,
the one thing I want to make it clear, because I was going to Interior and I heard the mayor on the radio, CKWX, saying Coquitlam will pay for the whole bridge. Well, you know, I've got great problems with that. The fact is that somehow our taxpayers are going to be funding a $1.7 million touch in New Westminster. I got great problems with that, to commit our taxpayers to replacing that bridge with Coquitlam money. Certainly it should be New Westminster, and Coquitlam has always been at the table, so fine, I don't mind 50-50, but I can't see that somehow Coquitlam should pay for the whole bridge. Matter of fact, the fact is that when I was in Ottawa, that United Boulevard became being, because I was chairman of the caucus, and the permits were, these applications for roadways, infrastructure was coming through my desk, and I seen one there signed Mayor Lou Sikora for United Boulevard. So I said, well, that's got to be approved, so I approved it. But anyways, it was only part of United Boulevard. So I phoned Helen Sparks. I said, Helen, the mayor of New Westminster then. I said, we have infrastructure money here in Ottawa. If you give me an application to complete Braid Street or the United Boulevard with a new bridge and new everything else, we can grant you the money. We have the money, enough money in the infrastructure money that's going to be handed out to some different cities and towns. And she says, we don't want it. Well, now, the one thing that I want to say, that it's $1.7 million. What happens if New Westminster says no? What, it's going to go to court then, or where's it going to wind up at?
Yeah,
Mr. Zuzak.
Yeah, thanks, Your Worship. Well, certainly we would be bringing forward all information to council is where that would firstly go. But there is a dispute resolution process for intermunicipal facilities, and it involves the province, and the province has a responsibility essentially to arbitrate and make decisions about any disputes regarding intermunicipal facilities. Now, we are hopeful that we will be working cooperatively with New West and address any concerns adequately that they have. But that remains to be seen. We will certainly come back to council for a discussion on what the next step is once we understand where New Westminster is at with this proposal.
There's no question about it. I think the provincial government should be involved much sooner, because number one, even let's say New Westminster says, okay, we'll rebuild it. Okay, we'll help you rebuild it. Coquitlam 50%, used to be 50%, and then they go and block off over the bridge, block it off to where you can't go any further, which they have a right to do on their roads. Then what do we do?
Well, they don't have the right to do that. It's an intermunicipal road. Mr. Zuzak.
I'm sorry, I'm not sure if I've understood the question, but because this is an intermunicipal facility, neither, no one can really shut it down. It must remain open. If that kind of an action occurred, we would certainly be going very, very quickly, I think, to, let's call it the arbitrator, to deal with that. But I think those days are long gone. That was more than 10 years ago. The current issue is really about reliability and safety in the transportation system. And we're moving forward with those ideas in mind.
I understand, United Boulevard, the businesses along there certainly need that bridge, no question about it, for movement. But I've spoken to people west of Plateau, I've spoken to people in Coquitlam Center, and they said, are you crazy? You're going to spend our money in Westminster Bridge?
Councillor Sikora, the report doesn't say that.
I know. But Mayor, I'm just going by what you said on the radio. You on radio at CKNW and CKWX. Are you denying that? That you said Coquitlam will pay for the whole bridge?
The report before us says that we will... Well, Councillor Sikora, do you want to go on the basis of the report before us? I did email all of council, and the ones that got back to me, essentially all of council said, yes, that sounds like an appropriate response.
All council?
I emailed everybody, yes.
Except me.
Oh, no, I emailed you too.
No, you didn't. If you did, certainly you could have got me on the phone because you knew I was out of town. But anyways,
no, you were in town that day.
We're not going to go into
But Councillor Sikora, I emailed everybody, and what I said on the radio was that we would be willing even to pay for it if that was the barrier. So the issue, though, before us is this staff report simply says we're going to New Westminster to propose that we both together build a bridge.
No,
so
Mayor,
if you want to focus on something else, I just urge you to deal with the staff report that's before us.
I can get you a clip of what you said.
I just said what I said.
You said at CKWX, the city of Coquitlam will pay for the bridge.
I just said that,
okay.
Yes.
Not maybe. Okay.
Well, I can't say. I didn't say we were definitely paying for the bridge.
In any case, I think it's very badly needed. But the fact is that there is taxpayers in this city saying, "Are you crazy? You'll be spending my money
Councillor
to build a bridge for New Westminster?"
The staff report before us says that New Westminster will pay half for it.
Well, we'll see if they do. Okay.
Okay.
So, Your Worship, just a point of clarification, just to be really clear, the city of Coquitlam has spent money on this bridge in the past and continues to spend money on this bridge. Yeah, it's living up to its intermunicipal responsibilities.
Obligations.
For 50%.
That's correct.
Yeah, that's exactly what we're going on. There's no question about that. And I think that, you know what, I have no problem with the 50% at all. And let's see what happens. Thank you very much.
Well, actually, Councillor Sikora, that portion of United Boulevard that we got upgraded to 4 lanes, partly with the federal grant and partly with City of Coquitlam fund, that's also an intermunicipal road, and we paid 100% of that one. So, in any case, Councillor O'Neill.
Yes, thanks. I had questions about the 10,000 vehicles a day because 86,400 seconds in a day, 10,000 vehicles, that would mean one vehicle every 8.5 seconds, 24 hours a day by my arithmetic, unless I'm messed up here somewhere. That's a lot, but even if it's only 5,000, it's an incredibly vital bridge. And by the way, just putting in context, if it is 10,000, my goodness, is it ever an important bridge? Golden Ears Bridge is getting 30,000 vehicles a day right now. So big golden ears, 30,000. This little one lane, we're getting 10,000. Pretty amazing. I somehow doubt that it's that much, but if it is, even if it's half that amount, it's really an important transportation link, and I'm fully supportive of this recommendation here. So 10,000 or 5,000, whatever, but if it's 10,000, my goodness, no wonder it wears out quickly. Thank you.
Thank you. I will certainly support this, but there are a couple of things that I would like to say about it. The bridge as it stands now can't take our fire trucks, and if there's ever a mutual aid situation from either side, it's not going to go over the Little Bailey Bridge that sits there now. The Royal Columbian Hospital is a trauma center, and in case of a huge emergency, an earthquake or some other horrible thing that might beset this area, the only place in and out of Royal Columbian would be the little tiny street in front of it, not the main highway behind it, because it would be clogged with trucks. They just wouldn't move. For a trauma center, I think you need to have more than one road access, and this provides two. In the regional growth strategy, I discussed it with staff, and there are many references to having a road for goods and services that is open, and we share and we do all of those things. Is there something written in stone about every road in the whole of the metro? No. But this is a good neighbor document, and the signatories to it should be good neighbors. And that's what we're trying to be in this case. There is a dispute resolution process. It's an intermunicipal road. I don't think there's any dispute whether this is an intermunicipal road and if it's needed. And for our good neighbors in New Westminster and the folks that are living on the hill there, on the Braid Street Hill, to put the 2 lanes in only makes perfect sense. It only makes common sense, and we should have done this a long time ago, but obviously we couldn't get our act together. But we need to have these trucks, whether there's 10,000 or 5,000, we need them moving. We don't need them idling below a trauma center hospital or below all these folks that live on the side of that hill. With the 2-lane bridge where they can just come and go, and with the Brunette interchange and the King Edward, we will at least have a fair way of getting our goods and services moved through New Westminster and through onto the highway number 1. So I don't think it's if we should build it, or maybe New Westminster only wants 1 lane for their residents. For their residents alone, from a health perspective, and for the trauma center, it only makes sense to have a 2-lane bridge. I wish there could be more of a 4-lane bridge, but I think that's asking a lot now. But a 2-lane bridge, and I think we can work as good neighbors, and I think it will be good for both cities. Thank you.
4 lanes is the long term. Councillor Hodge.
Yes, and I think there has been a lot of confusion and discussion and confusion out in the community about this, and I'm glad now with the staff report, I think that clarifies that in fact it is an intermunicipal roadway, that we have been responsible for paying 50%, as has our neighbors New Westminster. So I think that clarifies that. I feel more comfortable in a partnership than I do with the suggestion that we might go it alone. Ideally, a partnership would include other levels of government, the provincial and the federal government. I think it's unfortunate that in the past, when there was money available, that all parties did not take advantage of that, and it's unfortunately it's lost money, and now here we are in a situation where we have to replace a bridge that is apparently a vital link. And I too thought 10,000 cars a day was an incredible number, and I see that Councillor O'Neill and myself use the same research staff, because I too checked the Golden Ears Bridge for a comparison, and thought, wow, that's we're almost getting close to what half the crossing there is, and at a lot less money than what they spent on the Golden Ears Bridge. So suddenly 1.7 million is looking like a real bargain if we can put 10,000 vehicles a day there. And I'm assuming that's our current number and not what would be using it if it were actually a 2-lane bridge. Is that correct? This is not an estimate. 10,000 is what we assume we're using today, not what it could be with a proper bridge in there.
Yeah, 10,000, Your Worship, is the current. Our estimate and guesstimate is that there will not be a significant increase in westbound into New Westminster traffic, simply because of the significant barriers that already exist. The railway operations and the signal light on Brunette and Braid. However, flushing traffic out of New Westminster, traffic heading eastbound, we feel there will likely be a good amount of more capacity for that movement, and we'll see where we get to.
Okay, and I think that certainly these numbers prove that residents from both Coquitlam and residents traveling intermunicipal are using this bridge. It's a vital link, obviously. I have concerns as well about access, particularly for getting back and forth to the hospital. Should something ever happen on Burnett, and Burnett were ever closed down, this would be our main access in. It's certainly a lot longer to try and go around by Lougheed Mall and down North Road. So I think that this isn't a primary access, but I know that in the transportation and in emergency planning, we're always thinking of backup and alternates. And I think it's vital that we have that link to our hospital. And also, you know, we never know what kind of a regional emergency might take place. The Burnett overpass has not had any work done on it, and it's quite possible that a brand new Bailey Bridge could prove to be a vital link for us. And I guess my next question would be is that this bridge, if it were put in and then later were replaced with a permanent structure, there would be some value to this bridge afterwards then, is that correct?
Oh, yes, Your Worship. This, the design is for a salvageable bridge. You know, should the United Boulevard extension or North Fraser Perimeter Road concepts actually ever come to life, then there would be value left in the basic bridge structure. The foundation work would be not salvageable, but certainly a bridge would be able to be sold.
That's good. I can't help it when I hear salvageable metal, and as I drive down United and look overhead at the Port Mann Bridge and see all those nice big girders there, I can't help but thinking there's a role for those to play somewhere here. But I think that the point is that if we have something that we can use later or repurpose, I think that adds to the value of doing the work. And I guess then the last thing I would ask is on the approaches. I know that we have done work on our approach. I guess there would have to be a little bit of work done on the approach on the New Westminster side as well. And was that included in this cost?
Yeah, there is an allowance for roadworks on either side of the bridge.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Asmussen.
Well, thank you. It's good to see that we have this report here trying to move forward on the replacement of this bridge. I think we've got about a year's lifespan in this bridge or so left before it will be permanently closed, Mr. Suzak?
Yeah, the bridge structural engineers have advised that the existing structure should be replaced by the end of next year. We're taking obviously a more sense of urgency.
Well, yes, this is an important bridge. I drive in and out of the Braid Brunette on an ongoing regular basis, and I'll tell my two councillors that there's a tremendous amount of traffic using that, and it would be 10,000 vehicles a day. I'm in and out of there all the time. There's a tremendous amount of traffic going eastbound, coming westbound through that interchange there, and it's a vital cog. The issue when we talk about getting to the hospital is not people using this way to get to the hospital. It's using Brunette, and the fact that Brunette is severely plugged up along there because of the increased traffic. We also have, you take companies like Stella Jones now having to come out onto the King Edward overpass, onto Lougheed, and trying to make that turn and taking up the lanes with their poles has been a very dangerous situation to get them in and around that area. The other area that we have with all these trucks coming out this way now is there's an increase in greenhouse gas because you're now having to climb up over King Edward, come down to Lougheed, climb up Lougheed to Brunette, which you didn't have to do before, which adds to the pressures in this area, slows down traffic. So this is an issue that hopefully we can get a resolve with New Westminster, but it's also very important for the economic vitality of our community in that business area down there. We know that this area needs better access coming out, especially through this bridge crossing. We've been working with New West for a number of years for a full flyover the tracks right up to Brunette to avoid the railway crossings. I think Councillor Reid mentioned about the RGS and our regional planning document you have, that to work as a region in planning, but working as a region also means working as a region accepting how traffic flows through your area and moves through all areas of the cities, because we all have to have good movements, and New West is going to have to realize that they have to be part of that. If they're going to be part of the RGS in the regional context, they have to be part of that solution and working for the benefit of the region in this area. So I'm looking forward to the City of Coquitlam and New Westminster getting a resolution to this quickly for all the people involved. And I would hate to see what would happen if nothing's done within a year and this is completely closed down, and the impacts on our businesses within that area and the increased bottleneck that's happening right now on the Brunette overpass. Because it was bad even before with the lights and all that truck traffic coming off the freeway, lining up and backing up. So let's hopefully this gets something done. Thank you.
Thank you. Just to clarify one last point, right now we're contemplating a modular bridge, although I still like the idea of taking one of those sections of the Port Mann Bridge and trucking it over. We'd end up with a beautiful, much wider than we need section of bridge. Some heritage too, and I think, but anyway, the more realistic one is probably just the modular, the Bailey Bridge. If you go Wikipedia to Bailey Bridge, you'll see this modular structure that is, you can take it apart and reinstall it someplace else, and we may well have a use for it in a few years out on Quarry Road or something. That's the kind of structure we're contemplating.
That's right. It may not actually be a Bailey or Acro panel bridge, but it will be a standard modular bridge of some kind that is salvageable. One of the key guiding criteria we have is to keep the width of this bridge to an absolute minimum in order to avoid riparian impacts. The DFO issues and whatnot. So.
Yes, but with one section of the Port Mann, we could stretch from, anyway.
Indeed.
Okay. Staff reports before us. All in favor? Opposed? Carried unanimously.
Item 9 pertains to encouraging citizen engagement in town hall meetings. The two-part recommendation is that Council approve the use of digital engagement opportunities during town hall meetings as set out in the report. And 2, that the start of the town hall meeting currently scheduled for the morning of April 20th be changed to 1:30 p.m. on April 20th.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Councillor O'Neill, second by Councillor Robinson. Councillor O'Neill.
Yes, thank you very much. I'm so pleased to see this come forward so quickly. It's great to have this in place, we hope. Now, I remember the day when faxes were the cutting edge of communication, and of course those were supplanted by email. And it looks like email now has been supplanted by Facebook and Twitter. The report suggests that the interaction that we have, that we're going to webcast this public meeting, and that people can communicate with us through Facebook or Twitter. It doesn't specifically say email, unless I missed it. Are we thinking, is email now gone the way of the fax? Or to the clerk through the mayor? Will email be possible? Will people be able to use good old-fashioned email to communicate?
Your Worship, if I may redirect that to the Manager of Communications, because that part of the report dealt with an area that his business area addressed.
There it is.
It's a good point, and it can be added. It was hoped that it would be a bit more dynamic if we were using the other two forms. Also, to verifying media, where people are coming from, who they are, screening those individuals is a little tougher. So, that was, it certainly could be added to the list, but wasn't considered to be one of the premium kind of deliverables.
I think a lot of our more established residents who've been here a long time and have slowly embraced the internet and slowly gotten on the computers. Then they've gotten their email accounts. A lot of them really haven't progressed much beyond email. They can watch something on the computer on a webcast, and they can send an email. They're not going to be able to phone in. That was another idea that I've thrown out there, and that was dealt with in the report. Much too complicated at this stage.
Exactly.
But I would like to see the ability to email. And the email doesn't have to automatically show up on the big screen or anything like that. It can be, it could go through a filter of some sort, a human filter, gatekeeper rather.
Sure.
And but I think having the ability to get an email question put in or comment would be good. Hopefully it can be done.
That shouldn't be a problem.
Okay, good. Thank you. Otherwise, a great report. I'm so glad we're proceeding with this, and I also support the delay of the start of the town hall meeting by a few hours to the afternoon that will allow us to do other important business in the morning. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. And now Councillor Sikora.
Yeah, thank you very much. Couple things. You know, did we not advertise these dates back in December for town hall meetings? Did we?
What we did is we approved the council schedule, but we did not have a time set. One of the reasons that we wanted to bring back it before you today was, do you agree with this change? And there was an option to move it to a following week, or did you want to perhaps not attend the other engagement? But we have not advertised the town hall meetings as a specific event yet, which is the reason for the timing of the report now, because we try to target our advertising closer to the event in order to match up to people's scheduling of their own activities.
Okay. I think I myself personally feel that from 1:30 to 4:30 in the afternoon is a wrong time. I think that there's many people that are getting ready to go for dinner, or they're going out shopping, or whatever it is, and may not probably be able to make it as they would in the morning. Secondly, I think town hall is a wrong place to have a town hall meeting at the city hall. You know, we talked about it, that it's too formal for people to go to the podium. What do you think is going to be when we have a town hall meeting? It's not going to be formal? Too formal? Of course it will be. A lot of people get nervous when they have to go to the podium and speak to us in the evening as it is. And now we're going to have the town hall meeting in here. You know, think about it, what it does to the general public as far as it's too formal. It's too, for a lot of people that would come into meeting, they'd be very nervous to come to the podium and speak. So to me, I think number one, I don't think that anything's so urgent that it has to be in a city hall. I don't think for 1 minute it should be in the city hall, the town hall meetings. If we're going to get the audience to be able to talk to us one-on-one or whatever it may be, it can't be the formal setting like the city hall is. It's too formal. I think going out into community where we can have some mics in the middle of the floor, and the council members sitting at one table, not the way we are right now, and certainly it's a lot warmer feeling, much better feeling, and much better way to have it. So those two things, I think Saturday afternoon, like we've never tried it, it may work, it may not. But I've got suspicious about that. That it's Saturday afternoon, a lot of people are very busy. At the City Hall, I'm totally opposed to have it at the City Hall. Totally opposed. I think it's wrong. Thank you.
Okay, well.
Thank you. You've engendered you brought some folks to comment. Councillor Asmussen.
Well, I guess I have some questions in regard to this through to the clerk and communications. Is that my concern is when we're opening this up to Facebook, Twitter, and email, how do we really know that these people are Coquitlam people, for one, that are on Facebook or Twitter? And so I know we talk about a hashtag on Twitter, but on Facebook, how do we, so we could have somebody from Vancouver, we could have somebody who's 12 years old or whatever sending in questions or whatever. So we have no way of really verifying who's sending in.
I can speak to part of that, and I would defer to Mr. McDonald for other parts. Certainly staff talked about that. I mean, part of the challenge, those same people can come in person when we hold public hearings, but the other part was within a Twitter environment or other environments, you can't waste their valuable character limit on addresses. That being said, some clues can come from the type of questioning. There's knowledge of specifics of the city, but you know, this is the first time we're trying it out. There may be things that we revise the next time we try to do it, but you are correct in the sense that we will not know where they're from, and we will not be able to ask them in that environment to necessarily clarify their location. And that does have an impact, because I know council judges, some of the input they receive based upon the proximity of the person to the problem identified.
And would it be then also able for people to blitz a certain series of questions from different sources to create a stronger input than what is really there or outside the community?
I may start that answer, but then defer to Ms. Regan. One of the things that we talked about that as well, the questions will be coming through to staff. It won't be something that's going to automatically come up on the screen so that staff can not vet them, but organize them and put them in a way that they are introduced to the meeting in a logical manner. If the same question is repeated on multiple occasions, like a public hearing where the chair will say that point's been made and understood, we try to move the meeting along, and it's something that we would manage on the floor, so to speak.
And sorry, Jay, and that's why the communications staff are going to be on duty monitoring these and processing these requests, and it's the same staff who deal with the Facebook and Twitter accounts every day. So they're used to dealing with that type of information and having people who can be, I won't say difficult, but can be challenging on occasion. So these folks are very experienced at handling those. So they have a real sense of what's coming in.
I understand. If somebody has coordinated with a bunch of people to email or Twitter on the same point and topic, creating an impression that this is a big item within the city.
They're not going to control the airwaves because the questions would be filtered through the communications staff to the meeting. Okay. So it's not like somebody can simply go carte blanche and say, well, let's put in 50 on something about the bridge. We wouldn't allow 50 to go in because it wouldn't. It would skew the meeting.
My other question through to the clerk is, how much an increased cost is this going to be for the city? There was a talk of increased cost, but we don't know what that really is at this point.
It's a good question. Holding the meeting here would greatly reduce the cost than if we were to hold it, say, in Centennial Pavilion, which we've often had it. It is possible to webcast there, but the incremental cost of bringing up an encoder and cameras and stuff like that, and I don't really know if we would have some of the other technological needs that we have here. There will be some additional staff present that would not otherwise be present at Town Hall. The advertisements might have to be a little bigger than they otherwise would have been to get the information out there. So I guess it's a way of saying we're not 100% sure it's manageable under existing budgets, and it'd be something that we'd be able to report back on when we talk to council about the overall experience of trying this out.
Okay. The other issue, it comes down to, and I think Councillor O'Neill, when he raised this, because we found that the town hall meetings that we have had have not been greatly attended. We've had, I think, between 40 and 80 people show up to town hall meetings. We've had the vast majority of those people being the same people all the time. And I'm always concerned that council's taking or making policy or direction from 40 to 80 people when we have a city of 128,000 people, and it's not representative. I mean, I always find that our best information comes out of our Ipsos Reid study. We have 400 randomly sampled people. We get a randomly responses and information back to us. Town halls are not being used as much. We have a better communication today from email to us, from all different sources to bring information into us. We're far more plugged in than what we would have been 20 years ago when town halls were more of a standard way of accessing information. So I think we need to step away from doing town halls. I think one of the ideas of cafe style where councillors sit at tables, people come and sit down and talk with each individual councillor. Try some different things. But I have difficulties with town halls. I have difficulty with the expectation from the public to think that their issues are going to be brought forward. We've had town halls where groups have come in a large mass for a facility or a single issue. And I think we have to look at the limited scope of information that town halls bring into us. And I know Councillor O'Neill's reason for bringing this forward was to open up and try to bring more people or more interest into it. And I give him credit for the thinking outside the box on this. And the council probably going to move forward, but I do have some concerns on this moving forward. We'll see how it goes, but I do have problems with town halls and their effectiveness of the information that's provided.
Certainly there was a period when we were not holding town halls because I think council had come to that determination. I think part of the use of town hall stays is part of a suite of engagement opportunities. I think you're correct. There are elements that come before town hall where staff themselves, people will often hold up their item and wait to the town hall when it could have been solved many weeks before by phoning, say, the engineering hotline number and stuff like that. And we wish that citizens would have engaged us that way so that we could have brought relief sooner. But I think at the end of the day, it is one mechanism. It's part of a suite of engagement opportunities that works more for some people than others. And I don't have I could speak to all elements of what your points were, but there's people who make opposite arguments that this is how they choose to engage. And
I understand that, but I also want to point out that there's limitations to the information that we receive and how council receives and uses that information. Should be based on that compared to the size of city that we have and that input. Thank you.
Absolutely, and I think the other tie in there would be going back to identification of speakers and their proximity to the challenges raised. But again, it's something that we will manage. I think we need to have a report on that type from the communications, how that's been handled and what's been coming in, the problems they may have encountered, and is there any attempt of blitzing and questions and how that will come out. I think there's some interesting information we still have to deal with moving forward in this part. Well, and I would say on the other side of the equation of support for town halls, some citizens, it's very important to have unmediated access to their elected representatives. They want to engage in that discussion face-to-face, and despite the fact that engagement through a staff level might have achieved resolution sooner, it's more important for them to be able to say it.
And that's why I said the idea of a cafe style is just in different formats, trying something different, still engaging in our people to come out and talk with council. Yep. Just different formats that we can try. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Robinson.
Thank you. Well, I also like the idea of a cafe style, and would love to see us incorporate that. But I just want to get back to the use of social media, and I actually am concerned about too much mediation. You can have people come en masse to a regular town hall, and they've done it, and come one after the other to the microphone asking for something, much like you can do it on Twitter or Facebook. And so I don't really see that it's really substantially different. And people could certainly come who don't live in the area and just say, well, I live at 612 Regan, and we're going, okay. We don't check. We don't ask them to verify. We take people who, at their word. And if people want to participate using the Twitter hashtag, we might get people from Buenos Aires, and we might get people from Mexico City, and we might get people from Colorado, and you know, that might be one of the challenges that we'll have to address. But what I'm hoping is that it'll really get people from Coquitlam very interested while they sit sunning themselves in their backyard, drinking a beer on this Saturday afternoon. They can monitor what's going on and participate without really having to get up from their comfortable lawn chair.
The questions may be more interesting around 4:30 than they are at 1:30.
Right. So, I do think that it has some merit, and people are communicating differently, and I think we need to get with that program. And so I'm pleased to see it, and I really appreciate Councillor O'Neill bringing this forward. I do want to address some of Councillor Sikora's concerns about doing it here, for example. I'm not convinced that setting us up in a room, all sitting at one table with our own microphones, is any less intimidating than this place is. It's, to me, that 6 of one and half dozen of another. If we want warm fuzzy, then we'll do a little coffee meeting, and we'll sit up in some small offices, and maybe we'll do a cafe, and that will get us our warm fuzzy. The other thing is that with social media, and I know I would love to give Councillor Sikora a lesson on Facebook. I think we can set up a Facebook page for you. It would be fabulous. We could have a great time putting that together. And that when you're familiar with the technology, I think you'll appreciate the value it will bring in terms of people being able to participate and engage. When you're not familiar with the technology, I think it can be intimidating and unfamiliar, and that might create some anxiety. So if that's the case for Councillor Sikora, I'd certainly be willing to offer you some lessons on social media. We can set you up with a Twitter account. I think it would be great to see you on, we can think of a great Twitter handle for you. So I think this is a great step forward. Would love to see how it plays out.
Hashtag obstreperous.
Can I speak again?
Councillor O'Neill.
Yeah, thank you for allowing me to speak again on this issue. we're feeling a little uneasy about this, I'd like you to know that the City of Nanaimo is exactly a week from today having its first ever electronic town hall meeting. It's to do with getting budget input. They are allowing input through Facebook, through Twitter, and they'll have a form on their city website actually allowing emailed questions essentially. And they will also have access by phone. You can connect during the meeting, and an operator will enter your question or suggestion into a computer for the meeting moderator. So they're doing all of these sorts of things. Little Nanaimo, they're a little smaller than us, but so let's watch. Maybe we'll learn some stuff, and maybe somebody can contact them after they finish their meeting. It's on March 25th. At 7 p.m. at Shaw Auditorium. It's located at the Vancouver Island Conference Centre, so I guess they've got all the necessary infrastructure there. And that will be broadcast either through the City of Nanaimo's website or on Shaw TV community programming. So there'll be call-in options, online options, all sorts of stuff. And I guess it's not, in-person attendance is not precluded. Yes, you can attend in person. That's good. We're still allowing that person-to-person contact, which is all part of it. So, total coincidence, they're doing one as well. I'm not sure if you're aware of it, but it looks like they're doing the whole, what's the word for the whole?
Gambit.
Not the gambit. The whole, whatever, the whole
9 yards?
Some whole package there, sure, something like that. I was thinking of a better word. I'll think of it later, but thank you. So I just want to share that information with my colleagues and with the staff that's putting this together. Thank you.
If necessary, we'll allow you to speak a third time when you come up with the word.
Your Worship, if I could...
Sorry, no, wait. Mr. Gilbert.
Pardon me for interrupting. I just wanted, staff were engaged with this. I think if there was anything that was maybe seen as limiting this, I was only wanted to make sure that the event ran well and that this would be a foundation for future engagements that would be as rich or richer. And I know that the discussion that I participated in, it was all about opportunity and not very much about limitations. And limitations were only there because we wanted it to be the best possible forum for people here and people connecting electronically.
There you go. Now, Councillor.
Okay, thank you very much. I think another thing that I think is missing out of this town hall meeting is the ads that we put in the paper. The last few I've seen is a picture of SkyTrain coming in and a few other things. Why not advertise the fact is you can talk about sports facilities. Do you like our sports facility? Do you like the hours we're operating? Do you like our swimming pools? Do you like our taxes? Give them a whole raft of things they can talk about, to see that it's really truly a town hall meeting, rather than, the SkyTrain, the picture of SkyTrain coming, and one ad only, probably a week before the town hall meeting, which is totally wrong. And the fact is, you can talk about, Councillor Robson mentioned about Facebook and Twitter and everything else. Well, something, I'm also a businessman, besides being a council member. I've got 3 businesses besides being a politician, okay? Now, I got this cell phone. You can reach me almost 24 hours a day. I have an email when I get home, whether it be midnight or 11 o'clock at night or whatever time. I open it, take a look and see what's there. I don't go to a meeting like I used to go to the Metro Vancouver meetings. And guess what? Instead of the board of directors paying attention to what is being said and what are they deciding on, they're going, every one of them, and then they pick up their check for $400 and some odd and they disappear, and then they don't even know what kind of decision has been made. So, I don't need tweeters or Facebook, and I know that the mayor is on the Facebook because I get quite a few people phoning me saying, what is your mayor doing? He's always on the Facebook, you know what I mean? Well, maybe you got 24 hours a day to be in the Facebook or 24 hours a day to be in Twitter. I don't have that time. And I don't think that our taxpayers demand that off me. The taxpayers demand on me to be straightforward, be honest with them, and do the things that they think I should do. And that's the way it is. I don't think for 1 minute that somehow if I'm not on Twitter or Facebook that somehow I'm missing the whole world. I'm not. Okay, thank you.
There we go.
Question.
Okay, I had a couple of comments on this myself, but more importantly, some of the citizens of Coquitlam had comments because I posted the question online. And I actually got more comments in the last 7 minutes since we started this item, or 10 minutes or whatever, than we get at a typical town hall meeting. And they're along the lines of, actually one of them was, Sebastian says, get all of council as involved on social media as Mayor Stewart and Councillors O'Neill and Councillor Robinson. He didn't mention you, though,
no,
but I think he meant you.
That's good.
But there's a bunch of the members of the public that have expressed opinion. About 25 or 30 people here have expressed opinions on a subject in real time, and I don't know that that's wrong. I think, in fact, that's really helpful. There were some suggestions there that if this were a question to be put before council, we would all have public input in real time from way more people than the 30 usual suspects that come to these are important people that come to our town hall meetings. These are people we want to hear from, but I want to hear from more than the 30 to 50 that come every time. There's some other people that I'd like to hear from, and any way we can reach out, I think, to engage them is useful. Any way that we can reach out that will allow them to feel that they have more input, to feel that they have better information about some of these issues is really useful. I posted the other night, for example, the reason for the noise associated with the demolition of the bridge, and I had dozens of people say, thank you, because they didn't know what the issue was, and they could find out in real time about the issue, whereas there's no radio station's going to cover it, and the newspaper's going to come out 2 days from now, and by then they'll have the answer. We can do a lot more. One of the comments actually was that the city Facebook application, Jody undoubtedly, is excellent, and it really. These are people that follow the city's Facebook profile, obviously, and they find some value in that. I think finding value, and in fact, one of the comments is from a local restaurant that does pasta over on Lansdowne and Barnett. These are people in our community, and their input is just as valuable as the folks who've come out, I think. And incidentally, of the 20 that I checked quickly, I was able to see that at least 15 of them are actually Coquitlam or Tri-Cities residents. That's not hard to verify on some of the social networks. So these aren't the kinds of issues that we necessarily think that they are. Mr. Gilbert.
And just to riff off that a little bit, we would be using the same city social media in order to help advertise the event as well. The messages and the information will go out through there, as well as the series. I think we normally put 4 newspaper ads in for the town hall, and we will try to, and we write letters to all of the community neighborhood associations in the city and various means like that. So we will use the same mechanisms to get the word out as well.
Okay. And one of the last suggestions was smartphone apps. We should perhaps have a Coquitlam smartphone app. Anybody else? Seeing none.
We'll try it once.
The motion is that council approve digital equipment and change the start date of a town hall meeting. Start time rather. All in favor? All opposed? That motion carries unanimously because we are social media. We're heading there, aren't we?
I'm just posting that on Facebook right now.
We're going there. Good stuff.
I'm doing it on Twitter.
The clerk can't compete with social media.
No, because you've got to keep the meeting going.
I believe Councillor Reimer would like to speak before the introduction of the next item.
Yes.
Thank you. I'll be excusing myself for this item, given that it is about me. Thank you.
Well, normally you have to excuse yourself when you stand a chance of getting a pecuniary benefit, but you don't.
Conflict of interest with yourself.
Councillor Reimer, don't go away. I was going to make an amendment for 6 months.
Move recommendation.
Thank you. I'll just read it out for the benefit of those who may be watching on social media.
Yes, we haven't introduced the item yet.
Item 10 pertains to Councillor Reimer, and it's her request for leave without pay. The recommendation is that Council grant Councillor Reimer's request for leave without pay for the period from April 16th to May 14th, and that staff be directed to undertake the administrative activities necessary to process this request.
Recommendation.
I believe it was moved by Councillor Asmussen and second.
Moved by Councillor Asmundson. I'll take you as seconder, though. Is that okay?
Yeah.
Seconded by Councillor Sikora.
I was going to make an amendment. But
Okay, your amendment about 6 months, I'm not certain that, I think she did ask for 1 month, and who knows, she may get elected, in which case it's moot. So, any further discussion? Seeing none. All in favor? Opposed? Carried unanimously. And with deep regret, we might add.
Okay. Are you doing this tonight?
Yeah. Yes.
While Councillor Reimer returns, we might as well explain for the audience at home that Councillor Reimer is running in the provincial election and has asked for leave during the campaign writ period, which is the 1 month prior to Election Day. Councillor Asmundson.
Thank you, Mayor Stewart. I would like to move a notice of motion in support of Belcarra and the 99-year lease for the Admiralty Point federal lands that expired in 2011 to stay with Metro Vancouver as a Metro Vancouver park and to be directed that way. I think if the clerk, all of council has the notice of motion. It's been seconded by Councillor O'Neill, so I would leave that for council to make their comments on.
Second.
I move the notice of motion.
Councillor Asmundson has moved the motion.
Want me to read out
it's
the motion?
Seconded by
Councillor O'Neill.
Okay, now there are options are
Waive notice.
okay, we can entertain that a motion to waive notice.
Second.
Councillor Nicholson moves waiving notice, seconded by Councillor Hodge. Discussion on the motion to waive notice. Seeing none.
Having moved it.
All in favor?
Oh. Anybody on discussion on the notice? Okay. The motion is to waive notice. All in favor? Opposed? Carried unanimously. Folks at home, notice of motion requires a 2-week wait period. We've just waived that. Councillor Asmundson, on your motion.
Yes, thank you very much. This is just in regards to the expiry of a lease for a Metro Vancouver Park, Admiralty Point in Belcarra. And it could be I'll read out, whereas a 99-year lease for Admiralty federal lands expired in 2011, these lands are surplus to the needs of Parks Canada. And whereas Admiralty Point federal lands comprise key components of Belcarra Regional Park, which is the Stanley Park of Metro Vancouver's northeast sector. Therefore, it be resolved that the federal government be requested to transfer Admiralty Point federal lands in fee simple to Metro Vancouver or leased lands in perpetuity to ensure the preservations of these lands for park use for future generations. And that's what has been moved. And I think it's important that that park, if anybody's been down there, is a beautiful park. It needs to stay park. And we would hope that the federal government would listen.
Question on motion.
Councillor Hodge.
Oh, I was okay. They've just connected me.
Okay.
Good.
I actually concur with this. I only take issue with one thing. It's not the Stanley Park of Metro Vancouver's northeast sector. That would be like Minnetonka Park or maybe anyway. But apart from that. Exactly. Okay. It's the Mundy Park. Okay. It's 10 o'clock. Okay.
And all in the seconder.
Okay. All in favor? All opposed? The motion carries unanimously. Moved by Councillor Reid, seconded by Councillor Reimer to adjourn. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. We'll have question period from any audience members on tonight's agenda. Any questions on tonight's agenda? Any questions at all? Any questions? Seeing none. Thank you all for coming.